So your marriage is shattered or is breaking down, is in the process, and you don't know what to do. You've never been here before, you don't know anybody else who's been through this, and you're wondering, does God restore marriages? Can God restore this? Your spouse whom you thought you battle some of those things one way or the other, or whom you thought would even battle those things, for you, is caught in the web one way or the other, and suddenly you have to grow. You have to grow by yourself. You have to work things yourself. You have to get to the task, and you don't know how to even begin. How do you go about this? What do you do? Who do you speak to? One thing I've learned watching several marriages is the fact that when a marriage is breaking down, just like when you're in a test, when you go for a test and you have no prior knowledge or you have no prior information, or nobody who's been through this, you've never even been through the material before, and then all of a sudden you're going through this, you will not know what to do. So one of the things, if you have to write a test and you face something like this, the confusion, and you fail the test perhaps, and you have to still keep writing it, or it's a test you have to pass, then one of the major things you're going to want to do is find other people who have written this test and passed it. This is why we are here. We're here offering insight into these things, into the matters that you're likely to be visiting, or likely to be going through, giving you insight, showing you how we ourselves. The thing about it is, no matter the situation, no matter what you're going through in life, the Bible says, be of good cheer. Jesus said, be of good cheer. In this world, you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. So when this is what you're facing, the first thing you wonder is, how do you go about this? But if you find people who have insight, one thing that has broken down other people's marriages to the point of no retrieval, if you ask me, is the fact that, number one, they had no insight. Number two, the people they're speaking to, or maybe they're pastors, because a lot of time you find that when it comes to marriage restoration matters, people don't want to get involved in marriage restoration matters. I don't know why. But that is something that we're hoping to change. That more and more Christians will stand up to it and help to bring restoration to marriages around them. And bringing restoration, truly bring restoration, not tear these marriages down any further. So we're trying to bring insight to other people who are going through such things, so that they too can have their own marriages restored, and other people who are also listening can help people who around them are having marriage issues, can help them restore their own marriages as well. They can have insight into how to go, what to say, what to do, what to counsel and what not to counsel, how to go about issues, what to believe, what not to believe, as they go about counseling other people in their marriages. So, that said, I'd like to talk today about resources that helped me during my own stand. I remember during my time, I asked the Lord, I said, who else has been through this thing? Is there anybody else that has been through this thing who has come away from it victorious? Is there anybody else? I saw the fifth chapter, Hebrews 11, that talks, pretty much about champions of faith across the pages of the Bible. But this time around, I wanted specifics. Amongst those champions of faith, there was hardly anybody with a marriage restoration issue. There was not one of them whose situation was marriage restoration. Yeah, so I asked the Lord, I said, I believe in Hebrews 11. I believe in all those people who had their prayers answered, who stood for several different things and had their prayers answered. And so I saw a miracle. But Lord, I'm looking for people who actually have marriage restoration. I believe God for their marriages to stand, who marriages were broken, torn apart, dead and buried, who were based on the fact that they believed you could do something about it, they believed you could bring restoration about, and that they saw them. I would like those people, Lord, lead me to them. Well, seeing those people gave me hope, and the more I applied the things I was learning, first of all, from the word of God, from the things that they were saying, the things I was learning from these people, the more I saw even more hope, the more I grew. And another thing is that majorly, I am a pastor's wife. My husband had taught me in matters of faith. I'm a child of God who has had a walk in faith over the years, and meeting my husband was pivotal in my learning faith-related matters. I learned so much from him, to the point where at the time of the breaking of our marriage, it became like in the spirit there was a question being asked of me, like, okay, are you going to believe the things that he's taught you, or are you going to believe them because he said them, or you're going to believe them because they're the word of God? So let's see who you believe now. Are you going to believe those things because those things are the word of God and they are true, or are you going to just toss them now? Because if you toss them now, that means that you never really believed them in the first place. You only believe them because he was the one saying them. So, of course, I knew that those things were the word of God. And if the Lord has spoken them, then I would hold on to them. So it became like my own test on the journey in ministry. Would you believe for your own self? Would you believe enough? How much have you been tested? So I had to hold on for dear life. I had to hold on for myself, this time. And not just for myself, for the rest of my husband, for the rest of my home. I was somebody who had been groomed in the faith of the Bible. Apart from being groomed in the theory of the faith of the Bible, I also had testimonies on the matter. So I got that. So with the two, the Lord led several resources. People believe that gift, to teach other people within the church has to do with marriage restoration, so that we can actually seek out plan God's will for marriages and work them out in our own homes. So I began reel out 10 resources the Lord used. So first of all, I would like to mention the mother of them all. That was the one I read. Funny enough, I read this one before I even got married. But I thought after reading this one that I was fine. Two of them actually. There's this one and another. I read them before I got married. There was Total Woman, and then there was Fascinating Womanhood. Those were two books I read before I got married, and I thought that was all I needed until I faced my issues. And then how sometimes you read a material and you think you're fine, but you need to keep these things in your face, as in looking in the mirror. You need to keep these things in your face. The same reason why we are asked to read the Bible over and over. So we keep these things in our faces and not forget, what is expected of us, how we're expected to carry ourselves. So the first one is Total Woman, that taught me pretty much the basics. Then there's Fascinating Womanhood, that was at the time that I read it, prior to my getting married. But I'm not going to be talking majorly about the meat from those ones, because those ones I read before getting married. I'd like you to also look for them, perhaps, and read them if you don't mind. Then now we go to the ones that I read during my stand that helps me through this process. Number one, I remember asking, because I was pretty much miffed about this submission thing, respect. What does it even mean? I began to seek to understand what respect meant. Because I asked myself what the possible reasons why my husband didn't want, this marriage anymore. I said, okay, what it could border on, maybe respect, because I hear that a lot of times when men are having issues, it usually borders on respect. So I said, okay, Lord, what is respect? While I was thinking about that, I don't know if AI picked up on my thoughts or whatever, but I remember seeing a Facebook page called Love and Respect. I've been thinking, okay, what does love mean? What does respect mean? I was thinking about the two words hand in hand, and all of a sudden I see a Facebook page called Love and Respect. I look at it. Apparently there's a book on the subject. I look for the book and I find it. So Love and Respect became a book that helps me a lot through the journey. Now, the book is divided in two parts. There's a part for him and there's a part for her comes first. Talks about how to treat him, how to understand him and how to understand his innuendos. How he now understood her, said, men deal with the wives of youth with understanding, don't be harsh. Wives, love your husbands, and men deal with your wives with understanding. So Love and Respect pretty much breaks that down by Emerson Eggerichs. Then the next one I will say is Five Love Languages. I think that is by Gary Chapman. Five Love Languages. It speaks of the love language of each person, how that we all have different love languages. What looks to you like love may be different from what looks to be like love. So you may think you're loving me by certain things that you're doing, but I'm not receiving in that love. Yeah. So I also saw that was a major issue in my own marriage, because the things I was doing, when you're keeping home, you're looking after your spouse's children. You think that translates, you're keeping a good home, cooking decent meals, and you're looking after your children. You think translates into love. I wasn't speaking my husband's love language. Neither was he particularly speaking my own love language. So we missed out on that. And then love language, the book Five Love Languages helped me understand that, how important that was, to get to understand what kind of person my husband was, what his love language was, and how to deal with him. So then now became a question of there's how to treat a man as opposed to how to treat a woman. There's how to relate with a man as opposed to how to relate with a woman. The way, for instance, that I relate with you as my friend, who's a girl, who's a lady like myself, who's a woman like myself, is totally different the way I should approach relating with my spouse, my husband, because he's a man. or with any other man, for instance, because they see things differently. We interpret things differently. I'm speaking to my, my bestie now. Certain things I'll say and she can pretty much finish my sentences. But when I'm speaking to my husband, by the tone of my voice or by certain characteristics, he reads a totally different meaning. I've seen that take place over and over and over and over again with men. Something I was totally oblivious of before our separation. I never quite saw that. Something I would say to a fellow girl, and she would totally understand. And she would even laugh and find it hilarious. But say the same thing to a man, and he reads a totally different meaning. So, but these days I'm more careful. You may think, oh, am I going to keep walking on ice? No. Once you have the understanding, it comes natural. It just comes natural. You understand. Even when you miss it, you understand. Oh, I missed it here, and then it's easy for you to apologize. And he understands that. Oh, yes, she's apologized because he too misses it sometimes. But when you're totally oblivious, it can be upsetting, and that's not what you want to do. So, 5 love languages also helped me. The next one that helped me was Spirit Controlled Temperament by Tim LaHaye. I had read this one also prior to getting married, but I didn't realize. I think it got to a point where I swept it under the carpet, and I said to myself, "We don't keep people in boxes of personality types and say this is how they are." So I started to disregard that material until my marriage broke apart and I had to dust off the book again and begin to look at it again. I began to see that, oh my goodness, there is actually some information here that is very crucial for me in my marriage, that could have been very helpful for me. So I began to regret having pushed it under the carpet. So it became a question of there is how it to a man. I hope this doesn't sound like way too much. It's just that because you don't know about it yet, it sounds like much. But when you start to get to know about it, it becomes second nature. It becomes more fun working with these things. Yeah, it just becomes second nature. So there is how to relate with men as men. Then there is how to relate with individuals, individual personalities, individual personality types, how to understand individual personality types. Along with those individual personality types also come their love language, each of their love languages. When we take note of all of that, we're pretty much mastering the art of understanding. We're pretty much mastering the art of loving our spouses, And yes, it is an assignment that is given to us to personally take the time to understand who we're dealing with, the person we call our spouse, how to understand them and how to deal with them and how to work with them. And trust me, if you're not their spouse, you're not likely to give that much time to doing these things. But if you're their spouse and you love them, you would naturally gravitate towards wanting to learn these things. The time and energy talking about the pain here and there, you can invest that energy and that amount of time into learning the more about the person that you call your spouse. And once you do that, you're sure to have a much better time. I think I've named 5 resources now. The next one I will mention now, and that's number 6. I will say Steve Harvey. Act like a lady, think like a man. I thought to myself, is there some code somewhere? Is there some conversation that men have when they're together? About certain expectations they have of women that we don't know about. I didn't know who to ask this question, so I said, how do I find out? And I just so happened to come across Steve Harvey's book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. I said, okay, let me see. Steve Harvey was not my go-to author. Yeah, a comedian. I wasn't sure how much wisdom I could glean from Steve Harvey. But Steve Harvey is a man. And I said to myself, if anybody is going to have surely been in those conversations, Steve Harvey would certainly have been one of those. And I hear that he had been divorced before and remarried. So I wondered, what was it that made you want to leave your former wife to find another? Yeah, he dared to look through the book. So let me see what an average man, my husband is not an average man. See what an average, but I just wanted to have a general idea. What are the things that an average man could possibly be looking out for? I picked up the book and I read it and I saw certain things that made sense to me. Now, forward to how many years later we see that particular marriage that he embraced eventually broke apart. So that puts a question mark on some of those things that he claimed to have been looking for that he found. I know Steve Harvey, for instance, talks about stuff like what you bring to the table. Now, these are conversations that come amongst unbelievers, not Christian men. I don't imagine that my husband had that conversation with anybody, but he taught me a lesson. Not to say that you bring 50-50 to the table, no, but what you bring to the table should be obvious. For instance, you should be praying for your husband. That should be obvious. Your husband should at least take some solace in the fact that, okay, I have a wife who prays for me. There should be certain things that come, not the basics, not that, oh, she cooks, because if you cook, my husband went out of way to prove to me that if it's about food, I can buy takeout. I can live on takeout. It's not about food. It should be something beyond that. I started to learn to ask myself certain questions. Your place as a wife should be evident, be obvious, not lackadaisical, and it should be strong. I'd like to, did I say condolences to Steve Harvey for what eventually happened to him with his wife? I'm not very sure I know the rest of the story, but at the time I started to hear of it, I heard that that's his second wife this time. She was on her way out and things had gone, south. I think they did get divorced eventually. That's the second marriage now, but sad to hear. Yet I learned this and that, from that material. So that's the sixth material. The seventh material I would say is the site for restored marriage. Is an restoration counseling platform here on YouTube, on Facebook, they're around it. But there is a particular site of theirs that I found. It's called Just Marriage Ministries site. Strategic prayers to do with marriage issues. I mean, these prayers were tailored to the issues you're likely to face when your marriage is broken and you're hoping for a restoration. It was more like, don't get busy talking about it, get busy praying about it. Words you would use in talking about it in here and there, were now tailored into prayers to the Father for your marriage restoration. It was awesome. Each page I opened had awesome prayers dealing with specific things along my marriage restoration journey. My God, I used them all, and I kept praying. I built them on in my prayer routines, and I prayed and prayed, and it was so beautiful. Each of those prayers, not only were they prayers for my marriage restoration, they also healed me one way or the other, healed my heart one way or the other. I'd like to use this opportunity to say thank you to whoever it is that collated those prayers for the fan site. Funny enough, those prayers are not found on the actual Rejoice Marriage Ministries page, but on the fan site. I'd like to really thank the person, whoever it is who did that. I never quite subscribed to Rejoice Marriage Ministries work because I think they work sometimes on subscription basis. You pay for their services or something like that. I never quite did that. What I did was, yes, I subscribed to their newsletters, to their emails, and then I think they also have an app that I downloaded, and I was able to get their daily information and all that, which was quite a blessing. Yet I got so much. How we haven't yet seen Jesus face to face, but his words to us, the words he has spoken, we use them and we apply them, and we're able to experience him in our daily lives. Yet we haven't seen him. So the same thing I was able to glean from all these people that I'm speaking of, that I actually had never seen eyeball to eyeball. That's one. So that's it for Rejoice Marriage Ministries fan site and Rejoice Marriage Ministries themselves as a marriage restoration outfit. Then the next one, number 8, I will say, oh, bless them. The Prodigal Perspective. The group, The Prodigal Perspective, they were awesome. This was the first group I found when I was asking the Lord, show me a place where I'll find a community of people who are dealing with these things too, or have dealt with these things. And I found this group. It's a Facebook group, lovely community. The spouse who left, the poor himself who left, and came home after his wife stood, is the one who chairs the group. He chairs it with his wife, but he's more vocal than his wife. He's the one who does, the major work. So he's available. So one of the major things I needed during my time, I wanted to hear from the men. What are the men thinking? What's on their mind? I wanted to hear from the men in particular. What they went through, what was going through their minds, what were they thinking of their spouses, what are the possibilities, what are the things that could have influenced them positively, negatively, what are the things that did influence them positively, negatively, so that I could imagine what was going on in my own husband's mind. That proved to be a wonderful, wonderful resource for me. Apart from the fact that I saw several other people, women like myself, pastors' wives like myself, who were going through the very same thing. Some who had gone through it and were victorious, who had come back to, hold other people's hands, and others who were still in the process. And when we shared notes, we saw that we were experiencing the very same things, like the enemy wasn't doing anything new. The enemy's tricks were old. So nothing was new under the sun. It helped me along my journey. It helped me know that I wasn't alone. It helped me know there were other Christians with me. So we could pray together. We could trust God together. We could share scriptures together. We could, glean from one another's experience. It was just awesome. So that was it for me with Prodigal Perspective. The same place where I asked the chairperson what it was that, endeared him to his wife eventually that made him begin to think of coming back home. And he said that each time he had reason to engage with his wife, he came away with a fuzzy feeling in his heart. So that's for the wonderful Prodigal Perspective. Number 9 would have to be Derek Prince's Marriage Covenant. I came across that one maybe about 2-3 months before our restoration. Awesome material, especially for you if you're a pastor's wife or you find yourself in ministry. You and your husband are in ministry one way or the other. It was a beautiful book. It taught me my responsibility as a wife, his responsibility as a husband, what to look out for, especially in my own part of the bargain, coming from Derek Prince. He tells a bit about his way with his first wife, his second wife. So nice to glean from their own experience, and I found a lot of similarities. I found a lot of that thread with him in my own marriage, so I could relate with a lot of things he was speaking about. That was it for Marriage Covenant by Derek Prince. I liked his understanding of marriage, his explanation of the covenant. So I would say that's number 9. Then number 10. My number 10, I'll have to lump this together because this is not a book. This will have to be YouTube resources, major YouTube resources. I will speak of Laura Doyle, who talked about femininity. She too had been through her marriage breaking down and then believing God for her marriage to come back together, and it did. So she has all manner of resources on YouTube here where she shares insight from her experience and from her counseling background. Then there's Jimmy Evans. Incidentally, presently is on the backlash because he's having a major controversy concerning his involvement with Daystar Johnny Lamb and her new husband and all the stuff going on and his part in all of it. I must say it's sad that he has to get enmeshed in all of that. I must say that the material he has on zipping your lips, on how to get through to your husband's heart or to your wife's heart or to your spouse's or to your angry spouse's heart. So material he has here, are really, really, really awesome. And it doesn't change the fact that those materials speak. I believe that he has been gifted in teaching about marriage restoration, but in all of it, no matter who teaches you, you also have to be discerning. Even if someone said the right thing yesterday, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to say the right thing tomorrow. We are careful to make sure that the resource we use, the major resource we have, the major resource we look to is the Bible. So what we know to be true, we know when that is the case, and know to stop short. Another one is Dominic Herbst. If you've heard of him, Dominic Herbst is a Christian psychologist, and he too has been through a marriage breakdown and reconciliation, and he has awesome material when he speaks of how to deal with pain. My favorite material of The Gift of Pain. That's my favorite resource of his The Gift of Pain by Dominic Herbst. He's very much on YouTube. He's also on Facebook. He's fantastic. I've never met him, but I've gleaned much from his material and I've shared his material several times. I would say I would have shared his material if not more than 200 times, or counting, maybe about 500 times, in my counseling practice, one way or the other, just sharing it, to be a blessing to other people. And, every people testify to quality of the material, the saving grace within, his words. So I recognize the gifting that God has put on the inside of these people to share these things and to be a blessing to the body of Christ. Lastly, the Marriage Revealed Ministry, where my husband first said, our testimony, and that was a beautiful experience. Hearing him share, hearing him be ready, willing to it, and that began a series of ministering to other people who are in this space, who are experiencing the same thing. Yeah, so that would be about, and they have a load of materials, dealing with the same things. You're sure to find something to be a blessing, to be of blessing to you one way or the other, on that platform. They are also on YouTube and they're on Facebook as well. So that will be about it. Interesting that number 10 had to be a group of resources put together. So that would be about it. Thank you so much for coming by, for yourself, if that is the case, or for just to equip yourself with information, with knowledge, with insight, so you can be a blessing to other people who, may be around you going through some of those things. Or just to be prepare yourself, just to be ready. We don't know. You may be in the in the youth ministry at your church, or in the marriage ministry at your church, or in the marriage group or marriage unit at your church, and you want to be equipped for for such a time as when you will have to be counseling people who are going through marriage trauma. So thank you so much for coming by. Please feel free to go our resources to look through our channel to see what you may find useful, what may be useful for you, and your team, for your journey as a counselor, as an advice giver, as a Christian advice, marriage advice giver, one way or the other, or as somebody who's standing for your marriage, or as an intercessor, whatever the case. Thanks a lot again for coming by, and God bless.